Hello YouTube. Today I'm going to be doing a video on the Marshall attack. This video is by request from a Carltona Scarf. I hope that I pronounced his name correctly. He asked if I could do a video or videos on the Marshall attack, so here it is. This video I'm really going to call If You Play E5, you should be playing the Marshall attack. Really, you should either be playing the Marshall attack or you should be playing the Berlin. The reason for that is the Rey Lopez, which has been the go-to variation for centuries for grandmasters to try to get an advantage with the white pieces, has long been a very potent weapon due to the fact that white has invariably gotten this powerful pawn duo in the middle of the board with moves like c3 and d4. So the two moves that have kind of taken the bite out of the Rey Lopez are recently, of course, the Berlin, which has gotten really popular. That's the move knight f6 right here. But before the Berlin started taking the bite out of the Rey Lopez, the Marshall attack was taking the bite out of the Rey Lopez by forcing white to play some sort of anti-Marshall system. And the anti-Marshall systems were some sort of compromise in terms of tempo in playing c3 and d4. And that was taking a lot of the bite out of the Rey Lopez. And of course, this led to other openings becoming just as popular as the Rey Lopez. But the Italian game started becoming more popular, and other attempts in e4 started becoming more popular because the Rey Lopez was losing a lot of its bite, and that's continuing today. So you should definitely be playing the Marshall if you're playing black. So a6, bishop a4, knight f6, castles, and of course here you can play the open variation, or you can play the more solid move, bishop e7, which threatens to take the pawn. Then white defends the pawn. Then we have this move order is really specific, this is critical, b5 kicking that bishop back. And then here is where you threaten to play the Marshall, you castle. Now, even if you're not gonna play the Marshall, you should still play this move order. There's no reason you shouldn't threaten to play the Marshall unless you're just terrified of all the anti-Marshall systems. Now, the thing is, what this does today, the effect on top-level chess, is that this basically is forcing people to play some sort of anti-Marshall system, because the Marshall is just too good for black. It's either dead equality or it's possibly even slight advantage black. And that's forcing people to play some anti-Marshall system. Now, the point of the anti-Marshall systems is to keep open the possibility of the knight going to c3 so that white doesn't fall behind in development. Pretty straightforward. But in order to do that, white has to basically lose tempo on his plan of playing pawn to c3 and pawn to d4 and getting that ever so critical pawn duo that he typically gets in the middle of the board, say after c3, d6, and then say h3 going into the main line, and then whichever variation you choose, we could choose the Breyer variation or whatever, and then we're getting that ever so critical pawn duo in the middle of the board. Like if we just run through the main line of the Breyer, which is my personal favorite, then we're getting that pawn duo and we're getting some sort of advantage. Now, of course, there's other variations. There's the Chigorin variation, Zaitsev variation, etc., etc. There's a lot of different ways that people play against the Rey Lopez, but they all involve white getting this pawn duo in the middle of the board. And because of that, white is having a nice little advantage that he can call his own and that he can write home about. It's pretty cool. And that was the case for really like over a century, until people started playing the Marshall on a regular basis. And the point is if white just plays c3 and allows the Marshall, doesn't play some sort of anti-Marshall system, then black is going to play the dreaded Marshall attack. Black is going to play d5. And we go into the main line of the Marshall. Now, Marshall's original move here turns out not to be very good. The move that he played against Capablanca was knight f6, and that proved to be less than satisfactory. So I'm not even going to show that move. I don't have enough time to show that move for this video. I'm just going to focus on the best move, the modern main line, which is c6. But needless to say, Knight f6 with the idea of bringing the knight to g4. That wasn't enough. It turns out you really kind of want to attack these light squares, and this is something that the modern players kind of realized. So like after c6, d4, what modern players are doing is they're playing bishop d6, and then they're playing queen h4, and it looks kind of like a beginner's attack. We're just threatening, mate. But really the goal is to get white to move this g-pawn, and then black gets an attack on these light squares. And it turns out that just the weakness of these light squares is more than enough compensation for the pawn. And that's why people are just avoiding the Marshal. They don't want to play this position as white. Their weak light squares are not worth the one pawn that they got for them. So like after g3, queen h3, bishop e3, we go after these light squares, bishop g4, and then we have to play queen d3 because if at any point black plays a move like bishop f3 to threaten mate, we have to be able to defend that with the move queen to f1. And now I'm going to show you the absolutely ridiculous way that most modern games end, or at least in the last 20, 30 years or so. They go rook e8. Black's position is dead simple. He's going to bring this rook to e8. He's either going to play f5, f4, or he's going to play rook e6, followed by f5, f4, or followed by some attack with the rook and queen on the light squares. So like rook e6 and then queen h5, etc. And you'll see in a minute. So knight d2, and now we have rook e6. It's actually also possible to play queen h5 right away and attack the light squares this way. That's another way to go. This was done by Ronian versus Anand, where after queen f1, he decided to play rook e7 instead of rook e6, and then after a4, he decided to play rook fe8. This game also ended in a draw. There's just a ton of draws in the Marshal. These light squares are they're a problem. Even if white keeps the pawn, the light squares are a problem. So the main line right now, rook e6, a4, and then queen h5. And then a ton of games end in this way, which is a little ridiculous, but this is how they end. After this exchange, people play queen f1, and then bishop h3, just hitting these light squares. Queen goes to e2, because we kind of got to keep the queen on the light squares. Bishop g4, queen f1, bishop h3, queen e2, and moves just repeat. And this is how a lot of games end. And of course, you're probably wondering, well, could white, in theory, play for a win at some point? Well, white's tried, and white's managed to get into an awful lot of trouble. One way white can try to play for a win is with a move like, say, bishop d1, because, again, we got to bring these pieces back to try to hit these light squares. And then queen f5 sitting on the light squares. Queen e2, and then c5. And the game I'm following right now, this is actually a game where Vladimir Kramnik was playing black against Peter Liko. And you can't really think of a more solid player than Vladimir Kramnik with the black pieces. So if Vladimir Kramnik with the black pieces is playing a gambit, it's a fair bet that that gambit is completely sound. So this game continued knight f3, and then this very strong move, bishop f4. And this is the problem when you have a weakness on the light squares. You can play moves like bishop f4, and white can't even take this bishop because there's just going to be queen g4 and queen g2 mate. This light squared bishop is a big problem. And of course, Kramnik just uses his pieces beautifully in this game. After queen d2, he captures the bishop, f takes e3, then bishop h6, and you can just see these beautiful slicing and dicing bishops. He's got the bishops hitting the light squares, the bishops hitting the dark squares, the rook on the open file. And then after queen f2, we have rook fe8. And just look at this great coordination. This is just classic Kramnik. All of his pieces always look beautiful. We have the rooks all hitting e3. We have a triple attack on e3 right now. And of course, we have the queen and bishop still operating on those light squares. And there just wasn't a whole lot here Liko could do. Liko got a little desperate. He played knight e5. Kramnik exchanged queens, never afraid to exchange queens, and then just played f6 and just went after this pawn. And after being down a pawn, white was actually really happy just to kind of simplify this position into a position where white is down a pawn instead of black being down a pawn, because at least he managed to somehow survive. So he got to this position, and then Kramnik is up the pawn here, and Liko was hoping that he had some chances now. Now he's fighting for a draw with white. some chances to maybe make a draw because he's got opposite colored bishops. But he was unable to do so. Kramnik's technique, of course, was perfect, as Kramnik's technique usually is, and he was just able to convert this into a win with black. So that's kind of the issue, is the people that do play for a win in the Marshall attack, they end up losing because these light squares are just horribly weak. Now, of course, there are some other attempts. If you play castles and you play c3 and you play the Marshal, you play d5, and then e takes e5, knight takes d5, knight e5 here, and then we have c6. There is another attempt here that's actually that people have given a shot. It's d3 is worth a shot. It's another attempt, and of course, black kind of goes after the same type of plan. He goes after these light squares. But one thing that black has to be nervous about is after, say, bishop d6 and then rook e1, like if we just go after these light squares really directly with like queen h4 here and then queen here, one of the ideas that white has with this d3 maneuver is he wants to kind of maneuver his rook up and over to kind of defend these light squares with this cute little rook lift. So if you run into this, usually the main line theory is these days we play bishop f5 first, and then after queen f3 we shuffle this bishop back to g6, just kind of targeting this pawn, at least in the short term. And then this is just the current theory right now is bishop takes d5, cd5, bishop f4, d4, takes bishop b4. And you can see we have two bishops in this position, and these bishops are actually pretty powerful. So the game we're following right now, this is actually Anand versus Magnus Carlsen that was played in 2015. And Carlsen was able to get a pretty easy draw here with the black pieces. It turns out that the weaknesses in white's position are more than enough to compensate for a pawn here. So basically, if you're going to play the Marshal, I guess kind of the main thing that you have to prepare against, if you threaten to play that Marshal, you will have to prepare against some anti-Marshal systems. So those anti-Marshal systems are going to be either h3, a4, d3, or even you could even play knight c3, or actually even a3. So basically anything that allows this knight to continue to go to c3. So basically all of these anti-Marshal systems, for the most part, are some type of compromise on playing c3 and d4. So we'll just cover the two that I think are kind of the most critical, because a lot of them are pretty similar. So like h3 is probably the most critical one. This is the one that screams, I want to go back into the main line. So this would, a lot of people will play d6 here. I actually recommend bishop b7, because the point is they now have to play a passive move. They have to play d3 or knight c3. And that's kind of what the Marshal attack is trying to do. It's trying to make white at some point play a passive move and play that d3 or knight c3 and not get everything that he wanted to get out of the Ruy Lopez. So at this point, he's going to have to play that d3 or knight c3, because if he continues with c3, we're going to play d5 and play the Marshal, but this is an even better version of the Marshal. After ed5, knight d5, if they go for the pawn, which at this point they shouldn't, they should not grab this pawn, knight e5, rook e5, knight f4 is, this is major advantage black. Black has a winning attack against the white king. That pawn on g2 is in trouble. The light squares are in trouble, and the light squares are in trouble in an even worse way than they were in trouble in the main line of the Marshal attack. So this is really bad. So after h3, bishop b7, white's going to have to play that passive move. He's going to have to play d3, or he's going to have to play knight c3. So other anti-Marshal systems other than h3 include the move like, say, a4. It's actually also possible to just play a3. Any move that allows this knight to go to knight c3 is an anti-Marshal system. So it could be d3, a3, pretty much anything. h3, d4 is the most common. So again, against a4, actually a4 kind of forces bishop b7. And then the main line again is d3 or knight c3 here. Because if you continue with c3, again the move d5 works. And it works incredibly well again for the same reason. This is very similar to the previous variation, except that they exchange rooks, which makes essentially no difference. At this point, again, if they take the pawn, and again, they shouldn't, knight takes e5, knight takes e5, rook takes e5, knight f4, again, is a devastating attack against the white king. So that's an issue. So again, you're going to, even after a4, bishop b7, you're going to force them into playing this passive knight c3 or d3, which is what you want. So the only alternative that white has to playing something passive against the Marshal in an anti-Marshal system is white could play one of my favorite anti-Marshal systems, which is d4. And this is actually very similar to a lot of Italian game systems with d4, and then the idea is to play e5, and you gain that extra space. Now, theory thinks that, as of now, theory thinks this is equal for black, so white isn't getting a ton out of this. One thing you got to remember, though, is some people will play this without knowing the theory, and they'll play the knight takes d4 question mark move. And this loses a whole piece if you want to pause the video and see if you can find it. So it's knight d4, queen d4, c5, and then this is an old trick called the Noah's Ark trick. We don't have a way to attack this rook with our queen, so we have to move our queen, say queen c3, and then c4 traps the bishop, and this has actually got a name. It's called the Noah's Ark trap, so that would be kind of embarrassing. So after e takes d4, we have to play e5, and then when the knight retreats, the best move according to theory right now is to grab the pawn now. And after knight takes d4, queen takes d4, there's two moves here for black. There's c5, which allows queen e4 where we lose a tempo with rook b8. This is considered pretty good for white. And then c4, and then white's going to get this attack on the light squares. And white's going to get this attack on the light squares regardless, but it's bad that we lost a tempo, considering we have less space and considering white's going to be attacking. So most of the stronger players, they're not going to play c5 here. They're going to play bishop b7 and just not lose that tempo. It's really important to put your bishop on that light square diagonal, not allow queen e4. And then after c4, we're going to take it immediately because we want to discombobulate this queen and bishop. And then we want to play d5, and we want to get rid of the space advantage that black has. And after e d6, knight d6, this is generally considered equality, or something very close to equality. Queen g4, and then the theory's changed on this a couple times. We're not 100% sure kind of what the best move is here. There are games that have gone bishop f6, and I believe the old main line was knight to b5, and then after knight c3, b3, bishop d6. This was generally thought to be completely equal, although there's probably still a very, very slight pull for white because he's got his queen out on that aggressive square. But again, if you're playing the black pieces, you should be playing the Marshal, because you're going to either force white into playing an anti-Marshal system, which is going to be more passive than the regular Ruy Lopez, or if you get lucky, you can actually play the Marshal attack, and the Marshal attack, according to theory, is really just supposed to be good for black. You're supposed to have some type of advantage in the Marshal attack, according to modern theory. So I hope you have found this video helpful. Okay, and I hope that you learned something new about chess. Thank you very much for watching.